What is going on, everybody? It's the Reformation Keegan, and I'm here today to discuss Scott Snyder's Batman arc, aka the New 52. So I read the entire arc because one, I felt like I had to, but two, also because I wanted to. Because I've read a lot of older Batman stuff, but I needed to get caught up on a lot more contemporary Batman works. So I know starting with the New 52 would give me the education that I need to go forward with newer Batman stories. And plus, two, I'm also a fan of Scott Snyder's work, so that was another constituent to why I decided to start reading the New 52. So I read everything, and as many of you know, I do have some videos that do discuss the rhetorical impact of some of the stories, such as the Court of Owls, Death of the Family, etc. So I don't want this video to be too long, but I'm going to give some of my thoughts on the whole New 52 itself, and maybe some of the things I like, some of the things maybe I change, things of that nature. So I really love Scott Snyder's writing, but I know that his writing is polarizing to a lot of people. But I can also understand both sides. So I think Scott does a lot of telling in his writing, and a lot of times in English literature, they'll say "show don't tell." That's what your professor will say to you. And I think he does do a lot of telling, but I also think it is warranted in a lot of ways to give readers an understanding of the really intricate concepts that Scott Snyder is trying to get through. And Scott Snyder has a really brooding style that relies on a lot of mystery, a lot of mysticism, even dark mysticism. So I feel like he has to explain things the way that he has to explain them to get his audience to understand. Some people might consider this patronizing, but when you're dealing with the subject matter that Scott Snyder is writing about, you need to be as specific as you possibly can, which means sometimes he has to hold the hand of the reader. And one of the things that you have to know is your audience, and you you can't expect your reader to know everything, and you can't expect your reader to have read every single issue of Batman prior, or every single arc. Even though I've read a lot of arcs, there are times when other people are reading stuff that they have never read any of it. So you have to know the experience level and the age of your audience, which I think Scott Snyder does perfectly. I keep wanting to, miss the S on that when I'm saying his name, Scott Snyder. A lot of alliteration there. But anyway, he does this by telling you exactly what's happening and basically giving you a step by step per segment, which to me isn't a bad thing, but to other people they might consider it problematic because they think that their intelligence is being insulted or it's something that they already know. So that's a double edged sword, but that's going to happen in every facet of literature and writing, which I didn't mind either. I did find a lot of times, kind of like Crisis on Infinite Earths, there was a lot, and I mean a lot of explaining and a lot of dialogue, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I think you can tire out your reader in a lot of ways if you're doing too much. And I think that's where the show don't tell comes, because I think with writing a lot of times you can be more concise, and even I fall victim to this too, where I'm not as concise and I feel like I have to over explain everything to get somebody to understand the point that I'm trying to make. That just happens when you're an avid writer and you write constantly, because you're trying to get everything out and you're trying to say everything that you want to say, and it becomes a lot for your reader to bear because they're having to read almost an entire script, which is what you're reading really with a lot of Scott Snyder's writing, which isn't a bad thing. But I'm just stating that it can get very tiresome for your reader when you are overstating everything. But that's not, again, a bad thing. But to some other people, they might get tired out reading that much, which I don't, because I think Snyder's diction was very, very good throughout the entirety of this. I thought every story served its purpose. To me, there wasn't a story that was out of place. I know a lot of people didn't like the Bloom arc as much, which I did. I thought it was a very underrated villain. I think a lot of people question the motivations of the character, but I think with the motivations of the character come with the power struggle that was omnipresent throughout all 52 issues. So I thought Bloom served its purpose, or his purpose as a character. And I didn't mind Commissioner Gordon taking on the role of Batman when Bruce lost all his memories from the Endgame arc. So I didn't mind that at all. I know a lot of people didn't like it. I actually thought it was a nice change of pace because a lot of times you can get formulaic with a lot of your characters, and you're just repeating the same story but with different different timelines, different characters, etc. But you're still telling the same narrative. I like the change of pace here, and it shows what Commissioner Gordon would do to protect Gotham and even put himself at harm's way, because without Bruce, Gotham is in disarray, and it's even in disarray with Bruce, but there's still that sense of finality when Bruce does solve a crime and solve a mystery. And Commissioner Gordon tries his best. So again, that's where Scott Snyder uses pathos for emotional effect to get you to sympathize with Commissioner Gordon, but also really, really wish that Bruce would return to his former self. So there was a lot going on there, and I enjoyed that. And like I said, it was a nice change of pace because I feel like if you would have gotten the same Bruce throughout the entire New 52, I think by issue 25 or 30, I think you probably would have gotten bored with it. So I think Scott was actually very proactive in that sense to change that up. The Endgame arc I thought was also really good because, again, Batman can't read the Joker, and you never know if the Joker can read Batman, which he probably can, and leads on more than what he knows. There's an absolute in the Joker's chaos, which you also see in Death of the Family, which I thought was the second best arc of this, and I thought was really well done. Here's going to be a bit of an unpopular opinion. I don't know how I feel about Greg Capullo's illustrations of the Joker. Not that I dislike it, I just don't know if I enjoy it as much because I love the Mark Hamill Joker from Batman the Animated Series, and that's like the Joker that I like. So there's nothing wrong with Capullo's illustration. I just don't know if it's my personal preference, and that's a difference. It's not bad. It's just a personal preference, just like your taste in literature. So I don't know how I feel about the illustration itself, but I did love the Death of the Family arc. I thought that arc was fantastic, and I like that there wasn't a definitive answer that you could seek throughout. You had to be in the chaos with the Joker, and I think that's what Scott Snyder was trying to get through in that arc itself. So I thought that was great. I thought Super Heavy was very underrated. I thought Scott Snyder's encapsulation of the Riddler was really, really well done. I liked the diction and the prose that Scott used for the Riddler, and the way that he set up the riddles for Bruce and just made Bruce completely go mad. And also the story of Bruce not knowing who he was again was a really, really nice change of pace there. But the other thing I wanted to comment on too is the annuals. So I thought the annuals were very good. I thought annuals 2 and 4 especially were good. I thought the storyline with the Anchoress was super, super well done. And it really shows the dark history of Gotham. It shows the dark history around mental health, around around the dangers that it brings forth, not just to other people but to yourself. And I thought it was a really well done power struggle narrative. I thought it was great. I would have liked to have seen more, honestly, but I like that it was a one shot because sometimes when you ask for more, it becomes too much, and you wish that you actually had less, which is the less is more analogy. But I thought it was really good because the Anchoress you almost kind of feel sympathetic towards in a lot of ways. But at the same time, you have to remember that most people in Gotham City are a product of tragedy, unfortunately. So that's a really good theme, I think, that Scott Snyder uses. Everybody's a product of tragedy in some way, shape, or form. And then also the fourth annual was really awesome because you got to see Bruce interact with a lot of his rogues gallery without having the memories to do so. So Bruce doesn't really know what their intentions are, but you have like the Riddler, you have Mr. Freeze, Clayface, all those guys, and they're reminding Bruce of their history and their battles and why they don't really like Bruce and etc. Or like Batman, sorry, not Bruce, but this was a really intriguing story. It's almost like a what if, yeah, in a lot of ways, and it really showed the Riddler trying to exercise his power because this was taking place during the Super Heavy arc. And the Riddler was trying to really unsolve a proverbial riddle through making Bruce question himself and try to actually regain Bruce's memories in some paradoxical way. So I thought that was a super well done annual as well. I thought the annuals in these were very good. My only issue was with annual one, and not it was a great story. Don't get me wrong, but I don't know why Scott Snyder felt the need to retell a Mr. Freeze origin story, especially because we have Paul Dini's Heart of Ice, and I think that Paul Dini's Heart of Ice set a standard for Mr. Freeze that I don't think should be followed, but I think you can add layers to it. And I don't know if Scott Snyder was trying to add a layer to this because there were little elements of Heart of Ice in this, but also he was retelling the origin story, with Nora and things in that nature. So I don't know what the need was for that. Maybe to just get another annual out, or to maybe he really wanted to write a Mr. Freeze arc. I don't know, but I think we could have been left without that per se, or maybe have just done a different story on Victor, because I think when you're trying to do an origin story now of Mr. Freeze, it's always going to get compared to Paul Dini's Heart of Ice, which is very difficult to assess because, like I said, Heart of Ice set a standard. So I think it's difficult to rewrite an origin story that's already been told and is honestly fairly recent. I think Heart of Ice came out in 1992 or 1993. I think it was written in 92. I can't remember. It may have came out in 93, but I think it was written at some point in 92 and maybe even published. So it's not that old. So I don't know why the need would be there to retell it. Maybe Scott just was really, really passionate about writing a Mr. Freeze story in his own way. And that's fine because maybe we can treat it like an Elseworld and treat it like a what if. If you treat it that way, then maybe it's, maybe it's easier to take in. So we also have the Court of Owls, which to me is one of the best Batman stories of all time. And it's a double-edged sword because I think starting with the Court of Owls set the bar. I think it set the bar for this New 52. And I think if the Court of Owls wasn't successful, this New 52 wouldn't have taken off the way that it did. So I think you had to start with the Court of Owls. But the thing is, the Court of Owls narrative was so good, I don't know how anything else could have followed it. Even though Death of the Family was great, Super Heavy was great, Bloom was great, Endgame was great, I don't know how you could have necessarily followed that. I really don't. So maybe, see, you remember the New 52 was like a 5-year project, but if you could go back in time, in hindsight, use a DeLorean and choose, would you have put in the Court of Owls on last, kind of like a main event? Or would you put it on first? Because you put it on first and nothing else can follow it. But if you put it on last, people might not look at the New 52 in the same way, but think, oh, well, at least it ended on a high note. So that's something to consider. That's something I've considered. But I do think that the Court of Owls is one of the top Batman stories ever, probably in the top 10 at least. So that is that. So I don't know. I mean, that's a question that I think is really difficult for me to answer, but I'd like to hear your guys' thoughts on that. But yeah, that's pretty much what I have on the New 52. I thought issues 51 and 52 were also very good, because they were different and they kind of gave a nice finality and a nice conclusion also to the New 52, and showed Bruce more in a mature way, that's kind of not just about Bruce, but it's also about Gotham. Because I think Gotham is its own identity in itself, and Scott Snyder plays with that a lot in the New 52, kind of using Gotham in the first person, which was unique. But that's what I have for the New 52. I would like to hear what you think. I'm thinking about running a couple different videos, maybe reviewing some Zack Snyder work, maybe reviewing some movies eventually, maybe some TV shows like Batman the Animated Series, if anybody would ever want to do a watch along, and if I can get it on the channel with technology, let me know. That might be fun. And I'm also thinking of doing a video about my experience collecting comic books and maybe some of the things I've learned, maybe that I can bestow your way and that you can take and run with. What do you think? Let me know. Don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe. We're on the road to 500 subscribers, and if we get to 3,000 watch hours, I become a YouTube partner, and I can put out better content for you going forward. So if you don't mind, hit that subscribe button. Please watch this video. Watch all my other videos. I got a whole bunch of them, and I will see you soon.